Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our virtual class. By the way, I'm Jamalia Enero, and I'm your MAPI teacher this morning. Our topic this morning is all about opera in the Philippines. But before that, this is our objectives. Objectives: A. Discuss the Philippine opera. B. Value the uniqueness of opera in the Philippines. C. Creates an essay about the opera in the Philippines. Opera is an art and music form in which singers and musicians perform a dramatic work combining the text called a libretto and a musical score, usually in an elaborate theatrical setting. It incorporates many of the elements of spoken theater, such as acting, scenery, costumes, and sometimes includes dance. The performance is typically given in an opera house, cultural center, theater, or auditorium. It is accompanied by an orchestra or smaller musical ensemble. The dialogue is entirely sung and not spoken. So this is the example of Sorelia Theater and Manila Grand Opera House before. The elements of tragedy emanating from the popular themes of romance, deceit, murder, vendetta, and other elements of human frailty became a favorite story pattern of the Filipino opera. Some operatic works were based on previous literary creations such as Rizal's Noli Me Tangere and El Filibustrismo. The tragic endings and unresolved conflicts made them excellent choices for an operatic production. The first Filipino opera is said to be the Sandugong Panaginip by Pedro Paterno, a poet, novelist, musician, and a government official. This was first presented at the Sorella Theatre on August 2, 1902. It was later translated by the Englishman M.W. Labing with the title The Dream Alliance. Following this historic development, other prominent figures and ensembles contributed significantly in the promotion of opera. They were composer Bonifacio Abdon as the first Filipino opera conductor, Dr. Ramon Javier as the first Filipino opera impresario, who promoted local talents to participate in foreign productions. The Orchestra Molina was known for their interpretation of operatic works as well as other classical compositions. Subsequent Filipino operas followed sporadically, such as La Cambini by Patricio Mariano, that was staged at the Metropolitan Theater on December 19, 1933. Operatic divas included Nelia Manalo, who portrayed the leading role of Violeta in Giuseppe Verdi's La Traviata. Mercedes Matias Santiago portrayed the role as Lucia in Gaetano Municitis. De Lamermore, national artist Jubita Puentes portrayed the role as Mimi in Giacomo Puccini's La Boheme. The establishment of the Cultural Center of the Philippines, or CCP, by then First Lady Imelda Romualdez Marcos in 1969 paved the way for other Filipino operas to be staged at a legitimate venue of international standard. No Limit Tangere and El Filibusterismo. Operas based on Rizal's two novels, No Limit Tangere and El Filibusterismo, were composed by national artist Felipe Padilla de Leon. These were presented at the CCP Main Theater in 1970 and 1975, respectively. No Limit Tangere and El Filibusterismo were later restaged also at CCP as musical plays with new music composed by Ryan Cayabyab, a new creative team. Lalo Banigra, The Black She-Wolf is a three-act Filipino opera. Act 1 and Act 2 are based on history. Act 3 is based on a legend attributed to Father Jose Burgos. He was one of the three martyred priests, Gomez, Burgos, and Zamora, who were executed in Bagumbayan, now Luneta, in 1872. The music was composed by national artist Francisco Feliciano with libretto by soprano Fides Cuyugan Asenso. The premiere was held in 1984 with Lamberto Abellana as director. In 1985, directions was by Peggy Galaga and George B. Ledesma. Production design by Don Escudero. Costume designs by national artist Salvador Bernal. Lighting design by Dennis Marasigan and choreography by Rini C. Hinojales. La Luba Negra was presented by the Cultural Center of the Philippines in cooperation with the ASEAN Institute for Liturgy and Music at the CCP Main Theater from August 16 to 25, 1984 and the second season in 1985. Miss Asensio alternate with Eleanor Calvis as Doña Luisa La Loba. Jimmy Melendres alternates with Noel Velasco as Governor General Fernando Manuel Bustamante. Secondary roles were performed by Nomar San as Toralba, Gamaliel Biray, Nolin Cabahog as Father Sebastian Totanes, Eileen Espinosa Cora as Florentina Dolores, and Lito Karating Elmo Makil as Kapitan Makatangay. The composer himself conducted the Philippine Philharmonic Orchestra. Choral support was from the Philippine Madrigal Singers, Singers Harmonics, Staples de Santo Domingo, Passion Singers of Cardona, and the Zarzuela Foundation. Background of the opera. The story of Lalo Banigra takes place during the 17th century of Spanish rule in the Philippines. It revolves around the tragic assassination of Spanish Governor General Bustamante. His administration was greatly admired for his planned reforms in the colonial administration. It also focused on the bitter reaction and planned vendetta or revenge by his wife Doña Luisa or La Luba Negra on the religious perpetrators, as massive corruption and prior abuse were prevalent. The entry of Governor General Bustamante to institute reforms did not sit well with the powerfully abusive press, which led to his untimely death. Synopsis. The opera begins with a prologue depicting the scene of a woman dancing around a press tied to a log. She scolds him in a haunting atmosphere of pitch, darkness, and a howling wolf from the distance. The scene shifts to the governor's palace ballroom, where a welcome party in honor of the new Governor General Bustamante is in progress. Upon the arrival of the governor, lavish gifts are offered to him by the various guests. To their surprise and dismay, the governor downplays their ostentatious revelry and gift-giving as a sign of potential corruption in his song Makinig Kayo. The entry of prior or press to Tanis and his regal posturing further elicits sarcastic remarks from the governor as he and his wife Doña Luisa exit the scene. An Indino Spanish or term used for a Filipino native servant named Makatangay enters with a message to the governor from his employer, Auditor General Toralba. Price Tutanis takes advantage of the governor's exit by asserting the power of the church over the states in his song, "Siya ba ang magsasabi sa akin?" prompting the governor's daughter Dolores to chide him for his unbecoming remarks in her father's house. Fray Totanes apologized without a trace of sincerity as Dolores exits, followed by an interested young prior. Meanwhile, Fray Totanes intercepts the gifts meant for the governor. He got the gifts to add the church treasury. He blesses the guests as reassures them for a place in heaven. In the palace family room, Doña Luisa is singing an aria Huitzilopochtli about an Aztec god which her daughter Dolores was curiously questioning about its meaning. Their conversation is interrupted by the governor, who was on his way out to investigate the Auditor General's office on the state of the treasury. Dolores, suspecting the, the implementing results of the investigations amid the pocketing by the priors, weeps bitterly as her mother tries to comfort her. At the Auditor General's office, Fray Totanes witnesses Turalba collecting taxes from the various merchants in order to get their trade permits. He then shares the loot with Fray Totanes, who in turn gives part of his share to his mistress, Conchita. The governor enters shortly, and after a brief confrontation with Turalba, discovers the treasury coffers are empty. He orders the latter's immediate imprisonment in Port Santiago, a most dreaded place for criminals and political prisoners at that time. The scene ends with a duet "Anong saklap nitong pangyayari" by the two, with Turalba in remorse and shame and Bustamante in pity and disgust over the situation. The chorus sings "Sa Haring Pari" o "Sa Haring Hari" in the distance. The continuing crackdown of Governor Bustamante on the religious officials did not spare even the Archbishop of Manila, as they were all detained in Fort Santiago. A religiously led demonstration ensues in the town plaza, but is quickly dispelled by the governor's soldiers. The press are exhorted by Prior Prest Totanis to come out in full force to plot the assassination of their most hated enemy. A mass is held without the usual service, as the altar is covered black to symbolize a coffin topped by the Spanish flag and a crucifix. As they march toward the governor's palace, singing "Muerte, muerte para el traidor Bustamante," a messenger forewarns the governor of the plot, but to no avail. The assassins are able to reach the palace and kill the governor along with his son, Jose. Doña Luisa, witnessing his brutal killing, asks the Lord and the Virgin Mary to forgive the perpetrators. However, her mind snaps at the shock of the moment, wherein she instead evokes the Aztec god to assist her in avenging the murders of her loved ones, with a loud scream killed with pain and anguish. As announced her Christian faith, Don Luisa disguised La Banigra, or commenced her revenge elaborates on Sunday, her with sexually abused daughter, methodically slayers encounters, killed over breast in 2 years, and famous represented as the liturgy cower. Makatas also become a rebel different co-dependence, joins us with Lalo Banigra. They continued in their ritual religious murders, singing the song "O Poong May Kapal," kayong mga namumuno at hindi na malalayo ang araw. Bakit? Hala, oy. The scene is transported back to the prologue with Doña Luisa castigating the prior responsible for the seductions and rape of her daughter. Added to her earlier murders of the priors for the deaths of her husband and son, Doña Luisa's vengeful emotions have now been purged out when her daughter is widowed Sandugo. She has become one with the Indios of her adopted country. Before she died, Doña Luisa was heard singing Napakahaba ng Gabi. She speaks of a bright tomorrow after the long night as the chorus sings so long, Mahal kong kababayan. The music and libretto have closely collaborated to portray the dramatic moods in the opera. The dramatic moods are particularly depicting in the murder scenes that are effectively contrasted with the solemn sounds and religious fervor of the liturgical rites. The somewhat debatable moral issue of vengeance may perhaps be explained by the temporary insanity of Doña Luisa. It was caused by the brutal killings of her husband and son, wherein the Aztec god is portrayed as a scapegoat for the Christian purge. As librettist Asensio concluded, the night is long but the sun will rise, and rise again in the east. No Limitang Hiri, the opera. The three-act opera No Limitang Hiri was composed by national artist Felipe Padilla de Leon, with libretto by national artist Guillermo Tolentino. It premiered in 1957 at the FEU Auditorium. The cast included Juanita Javier, Torres as Maria Clara, Don David as Ibarra, Pides Cuyugan, Asencio Asisa, Milo Cristobal as Padre or Pres Damaso, and Morley Daram as the director. There were other several productions that followed the premiere production. The performance in 1987 was held at the CCP Main Theater from September 18 to 20, 1987 in cooperation with Music Theater Foundations of the Philippines, Oscar C. Yatco, conducted the Philippine Philharmonic Orchestra. The opera was directed by Jonas Sebastians. The production staff also included national artists Salvador Bernal for set and costume designs, Dennis Marasigan for lighting, and Selvia Garcianera for overall production. The cast of major characters included Norlin Cabahog and Sal Menio or Sal, Malaki alternating as Ibarra, and Dion Fernandez Nanette, Moscardo Maige as Maria Clara, Pides Cuyugan Asensio, Los Morete Asisa, Elmo Maquil, Nomersan as Elias, and Normersan Jonathan Velasco as Padre Damaso, Jonas Sebastian as the director. The novel of national hero Dr. Jose Rizal, No Limitang Hiri, has been a source of many artistic productions and endeavors. From a silent film adaptations in 1915, it was the subject of a movie in 1961 directed by Gerardo de Leon. It won the 10th PAMAS Award for Best Film. It was first presented as an opera by the national artist for music Felipe Padilla de Leon in 1957 and in 1987. It was later adapted in 1992 by national artist for film Ide Romero in a 13th episode series for television. The novel also became the subject of musical plays and revivals. The opera had its U.S. production premiered as No Limit Tanghiri, the opera at Harris Theater in Chicago on May 28, 2020. The novel behind the opera, the title of Rizal's novel No Limit Tanghiri or Touch Me Not, was said to have originated from the Latin versions of the words originating from John 20:17. It was spoken by Jesus to Mary Magdalene, who recognized him after his resurrection, reasoning to her, "For I am not yet ascended to the Father." The novel was written to expose the ills of the Spanish Catholic friars and the ruling government. It was finished in 1886. Rizal initially found it difficult to solicit moral and financial support from his friends until Maximo Beulah helped him with the printing. The printing of Noli was done in Berlin, Germany. The English version was later released to Australian bookstores, after which Penguin Books took on the task of publishing the novel. To have its own translated version, the book was banned in the Philippines by the Spanish authorities for its supposedly subversive elements. This led to Rizal's exile, imprisonment, and execution. Synopsis of the opera, Act 1. Espacio Sala of Santiago de los Santos, otherwise known as Capitan Tiago in San Diego, is the setting for the welcome reception. It was gathering honoring the 22-year-old student, Crisostomo Ibarra. After a 7-year stay in Europe, the Governor Dorcelio and his wife, Doña Victorina, led the guests list that includes Padre Damaso, vocal in his criticism of the Filipino whom he referred to as Indio, while also blaming the Governor Dorcelio for interfering in their local affairs. He continues his harsh attitude upon the arrival of Ibarra when he ignores the latter as he tries to greet the prior. Ibarra is also shaken and shocked by the news of the death of his father, where he confides to Don Filippo his puzzlement surrounding his father's death. Before Ibarra left for San Diego, lent Guevara, a civil guard, revealed to him the circumstances that led to her father's death. Don Rafael Ibarra, a rich haciendero of the town, was unjustly accused by Father Damaso of being a heretic and a subversive, and subsequently jailed. As the case was almost being resolved, Don Rafael fell sick and died in his cell. His remains, initially interred at a Catholic cemetery, were ordered transferred by Father Damaso to another location. Ibarra, although lamenting the fateful circumstances, does not hold revenge on his mind. Instead, he starts to reveal plans to build a schoolhouse in memory of his father. He is only partly comforted by the announcements of the imminent arrival of his beloved Maria Clara, the adopted daughter of Capitan Tiago. She was accompanied by her aunt Tia Isabel, and Ibarra rushes to greet him on their arrival. As the guests move into the dining room, the two lovers are huddled together, reminiscing their past moment spent together. Ibarra, still thinking his father's death, begged to his excuse in order to pay respects of his father's grave, while Maria Clara fears disaster. Act 2, Scene 1. All roads led to the cemetery as the people of San Diego observe All Saints' Day. Pilosopo Tasio meets Crispin and Basilio, going to the church to ring the bells. The ringing of the bells will warn the people of a coming storm. He cautions the two brothers to stay away from the bells to avoid being struck by lightning. Ibarra arrives at the cemetery to look for his father's grave. A scene from No Limitang hearing the opera. He is angered when one of the graben diggers informed him that he was ordered to transfer his father's body to another site. When he inquires about the locations of the new site, the man confides that he disobeyed the orders, and instead he threw the body into the lake. This causes Ibarra to jump at him in a fury and leave the cemetery in a rage. As evening approaches, amid splashes of lightning and sounds of thunder, the Gobernadorcillo and the Pilosopotasio are engaged in sarcastic conversation. The scene shifts to Crispin, who is suddenly accused of theft and is detained in the convent. His brother Basilio runs to their mother Sisa, but is shot in the leg. Sisa, confronted by the Guardia Civil, arrives and protests her son's innocence as she breaks down in shock. Meanwhile, the bereaved Ibarra seeks counseling from Pilosopotasio, who advises the youth to bend your head with a storm, or like a bamboo. Heeding the advice of the wise man, Ibarra realized, though that the authorities he intended to yield to were the same people that imprisons and caused his father's death. Sento. A young people of San Diego holds a picnic by the lake to celebrate Ibarra's return from Europe. Maria Clara is prevailed upon to sing, wherein she renders the famous number, Kay Tamis ng Buhay, recalling the happy life in her native land. Meanwhile, a group of fishermen arrived to lament the presence of a crocodile that prevented them from catching any fish. Elias, a woodsman, volunteered to drive the crocodile away but is gently endangered. Ibarra rushes to his rescue and saves Elias. In his gratitude, Elias warns Ibarra of the approaching dangers from the latter's enemies. As Sisa passes by, she is still lonely over her lost children. Elias assesses the insane woman to find the two children, while Ibarra continued to tell of her dream to build a house in his father's memory. Padre Damaso joins in the conversations and ridicules the plan as a sense of the fiber, to which an enraged Ibarra grabs a knife and attempts to stab him. Only the timely intercession of Maria Clara pacifies the young man. However, this gives Father Damaso an excellent opportunity to have him excommunicated. Scene Act 3, Scene 1. As Ibarra has been exiled from San Diego, Maria Clara is left depressed, while her tia Isabel and friends try to comfort her. Capitan Tiago enters the bedroom to tell the sad news that in spite of her appeal, Father Damaso had told him to cancel the wedding arrangements between Maria Clara and Ibarra. Actually, Capitan Tiago had in mind his relative Alfonso Linares to marry Maria Clara instead of Ibarra. Doña Victorina then enters the room and together with Father Damaso starts planning for the meeting between Maria Clara and Linares. Meanwhile, Ibarra has sought the help of the Gobernadorcillo, who managed to cancel his excommunications from the church. He is able to return and Maria Clara to propose marriage. The couple's rejoicings at the house of Capitan Tiago is interrupted by the arrival of the Alferez, who arrests Ibarra, being involved in an uprising again. Driven to depressions, Maria Clara seeks the help of the Heavenly Mother. A fire is seen from the closed law. Scene 2. Worried over the fate of Ibarra, Maria Clara ignores Father Damaso's advice, discouraging her from entering the convent. As she prays to the Heavenly Mother to restore her lost love, Elias appears at the window, taking along Ibarra, who has just escaped from prison. Ibarra is desperate at the rumors of Maria Clara's impending marriage to Linares. She explains that she was forced to accept the marriage agreement to save her mother's honor after finding out that her real father was in fact Father Damaso. Nevertheless, she assures Ibarra that her heart will always belong to him. Meanwhile, as Ibarra and Elias sneak out of the window, two gunshots are heard from the Guardia Civil or Civil Guard. Maria Clara witnessed the tragic scene. She thinks that Ibarra had been shot and killed, but it was Elias who was shot while Ibarra had managed to escape. Scene 3. Sisa is seen wailing her hunting refrain as she rests on the bombstone. Basilio, still nursing the wounds on his legs, arrives and greets his mother, unable to recognize him at first. Sisa eventually recovers her fragile memory and embraces her son. However, the shock of the moment is too much for her heart and she expires. Meanwhile, a seriously wounded Elias appears and instructs Basilio to build a prayer or funeral fire for his mother and him, as he gives him a stash of hidden gold to fund his education. As the boys started to gather materials for the funeral pyre and the early light of dawn appears, Elias gasps out his last breath of life. El Filibustrismo, the opera. The opera El Filibustrismo was composed by national artist Felipe Padilla de Leon in 1970 with libretto by Anthony Morley. It was in the 3 acts and written in Tagalog. The cast included Fides Cuyugan Asinso as Paulita, Constantino Bernardo as Simon, Irma Potenciano as Julie. It was staged at the Cultural Center of the Philippines. The novel behind the opera. El Filibusterismo or The Filibuster was a novel by Dr. Jose Rizal, a sequel to the earlier Noli Me Tangere. It tells of the continuing struggle of the Filipino people to achieve freedom and emancipation from colonial rule. Through the major characters involved, it reflects the prevailing state of Philippine government and society that was become corrupt and immoral, for which a revolution was being seen as the only solution for change. It was also perceived as a warning from Rizal, an intellectual of the highest order, although we favored a peaceful way of instituting reforms. The seemingly hopeless situation to achieve this method points closer and closer to armed rebellion in order to gain independence. They are the artists of El Filibusterismo opera. As in from El Filibusterismo, the opera Rizal considered this Sika novel as more profound and mature than Noli Me Tangere, revealing his less hopeful outlook on the political and social situation in the country. Written for the Filipinos and not for the Spaniards, it was first distributed to his friends in Europe. However, the book was immediately seized when it arrived in the Philippines. It was later used as a major evidence in the subversion charge against him. Even after his death, it became a source of inspiration for revolutionaries that included Andres Bonifacio. Synopsis of the opera. The major character is Crisostomo Ibarra. He had escaped from his prison for subversion charge some 13 years before. He was thought to have drowned in the river. He arrives abroad a steamship along with passengers from different walks of life. He disguised himself as Simon in search of his beloved Maria. Maria Clara had become a nun after learning of Ibarra's supposed drowning and because of her refusal to marry another man, as arranged by her evil father. In an earlier letter to Maria Clara, Simon tells her of his plan to lead a revolution. He had been sentenced for execution before he had managed to escape. Now, upon his return, he is bent on fulfilling his plan by asking the support of key people. Simon also comes across a medical student named Basilio. While the latter was visiting the grave of his mother Sisa, Basilio recognized the disguised Simon as Ibarra. Basilio, however, refuses to join his revolutionary cause. He prepared instead to marry his love, Holy, and lead a peaceful life devoted to healing the sick. On the eve of the supposed revolt organized by Simon, when a Prince Bodabel, Les Cloches de Combel, was being attended by Manila's high society, he hears the news that Maria Clara has just died in the convent. He contemplated to commit suicide. However, Maria Clara's ghost appears and asks him to stay alive to atone for his destructive spirit. His first revolutionary attempt has failed. In the meantime, his bitterness has jeopardized a love relationship between Juanito Pilais and Paulita Gomez. Paulita was an orphan heiress cared for, cared for by her aunt Doña Victorina, an Isagani. She was raised by the secular priest Padre Florentino. It also influences Basilio to join Simon's cause after his engagement. Juli has died in despair over Basilio's imprisonment. Actually, this was a betrayal by Simon by pointing to him and other students for allegedly masterminding a revolutions that he himself planned. Still ignoring the warning voice of Maria Clara, Simon hatched a second plan to be carried out during the wedding of Paulita Gomez to Juanito Pilais. His plan is to bring a crystal lamp as a wedding gift, but which contains deadly explosives that would go off once the lamp's oil runs out and is relit. This plan Simon tells Basilio as they are dining in his mansion. However, Basilio has a sudden change of heart and quickly warms Isagani, who is just arriving at the scene to watch the wedding festivities. The shocked Isagani runs away with the lamp and throws it into the river. As Manila is scandalized by the discovery of his plan, Simon escapes the arrest of the authorities and takes refuge in the house of Padre Florentino, near the sea. He again tries to commit suicide by taking poison. As Simon lay dying, Father Florentino scolds him for his plot whilst assuring him of God's mercy. He also divests Simon of his precious stones and hurls them into the waters. He called these evil stones which should remain forever under the sea. From a distance, Isagani contemplates his desolation at a lost love amidst and vastness of the sea, while witnessing a passing procession for the Feast of San Diego. Ballet in the Philippines. The medium of dance and ballet to interpret novels, folk tales, and stories provides visual excitement as the characters come alive not in spoken dialogue but in body movements. Much of the communication is relayed in pantomime. Mime. It is a performance in which a story is told without words by using body movements and facial expressions. The lack of spoken words or sung lyrics is more than made up for by the creative steps and arm gestures of the dancers. Their facial expressions and body movements add more meaning to the story being revealed. The performance is further enhanced by colorful costumes, elaborate sets, visually suggestive music, and synchronized choreography. Together, the dance or ballet production makes for a complete drama by itself without a single word being spoken. Filipino ballets vividly present folk tales based on local fables, for example, Lola Basyang, as well as epics from neighboring regions such as India's Ramayana, highly communicative movements and steps dramatize the actions in the respective stories. The colorful sets and costumes add to the glitter and attraction of the productions. Although not as extensively explored as the other performing genres for local adaptation, Filipino ballet productions have evoked wide enthusiasm from people of all age. They have been added to the repertoire of Philippine dance companies to supplement the Western classical ballet as a Nutcracker, Suit, Swan Lake, Giselle, and Sleeping Beauty. So this is the example of ballet, the Philippine Prima Ballet. This is a tatlong kwento ni Lola Basyang. Lola Basyang is a ballet adaptations of Severino Reyes' folktales, mga kwento ni Lola Basyang. It was meant to instill and rekindle the interest of the Filipino youth in the beauty, richness, and heritage of Philippine literature. The typical storytelling sense shows the grandmother Lola Basyang, the pen name of the author, on a rocking chair with her grandchildren listening to her fascinating tales. Two episodes of such stories were presented by Ballet Manila with Lisa Makuha Elizalde as the company executive director and prima ballerina, entitled Tatlong Kwento ni Lola Basyang 2009. Ang Tatlo Pang Kwento ni Lola Basyang 2013, the stories were taken from the dozens of stories in the collections of Severino Reyes. Tatlong Kwento ni Lola Basyang features the following stories. Ang Kapatid ng Tatlong Maria. This is a fantasy story set to new ethnic music in the contemporary style. It is about a hero's fantastic journey to different kingdoms in pursuit of his bewitched sisters. The music is by Joey Ayala with choreography by Lisa Makuha Elizalde. Ang Mahiwagang Violin. This is a local version of the Pied Piper tale where the main character mesmerizes his followers through the music of his violin. The story instills in them the moral lessons that good triumphs over evil. The music is by Ryan Cayabyab, arranged by Arnold Buena, and choreography is by Tony Pabela. Ang Prinsipe ng Mga Ibon. This is a love story where a princess falls in love with a bird. It was choreographed by Ballet Manila dancer, a male ballet dancer, Osias Barroso. The music is taken. The second episode, Tatlong Pang Kwento ni Lola Basyang, included the following stories. Ang Palasyo ng Mga Duwende. This is a romantic adventure wherein the heroine, Yani, is being maltreated by her envious stepmother and stepsisters. The cursed bird is changed back into a prince with the help of Yani. It depicts Mindanao and the ancient Pintados through its neo-ethnic movements. The music and musical arrangements were done by Diwa de Leon using a Higalong native boat-like strings musical instrument from Mindanao. Illustrations was done by Albert Gamos. The choreographer was Gerardo Francisco, who collaborated with Chris Bell, Mamangon, Maumi Jaina, and Romeo Peralta. Labindalawang Masasayang Prinsesa. This is a romantic fantasy of the 12 daughters of the king. In the ballet, the eldest daughter is acted out by Lisa Macua Elizarde's daughter Missy. The 12 daughters secretly leave their bedroom at night to travel to an enchanted land and dance with the princess. Choreography was done by Lisa Macua Elizarde in collaborations with Francis Jaina Sofia Peralta, Rudy de Dios, the Ballet Manila dancers. It features fairly simple classical ballet steps with the traditional adagios or slow movements for the prince and princesses. It also features the comic variations for the scenes with the king. The colors of the costumes depicted Filipino elements in fiesta combinations. The music used OPM hits such as Kailangan Kita and Ikaw ang Lahat sa Akin, arranged by Arnold Buena. Anting-anting. This is a horror comedy wherein the cowardly hero one tries to overcome his fears in order to win his love. The slapstick comedy is enhanced by exaggerated movements as Juan is later hunted by ghosts that add to his fears, for which he looks for an anting-anting or lucky charm to ward them off. Musical arrangements were done by Juan Carlo Magsalin with choreography of Asayas Barusa in collaboration with Michael de Gracia. Illustration was done by Hubert Fusio. Costumes features farmers' clothing for men and kimono saya for women. Television series The Prinsesang Unggoy, The Monkey Princess, Ang Walong Bulag, The Eight Blind Men, Maria Alimango o Maria the Crab, Ang Gwapong Sastri, The Handsome Tailor, Ang Mahiwagang Balabal, The Enchanted Cafe, ang Dragon sa Ilog Lingua, The Dragon of Lake Lingua, Ang Kastilyong Bakal, The Iron Place, Palace, Prinsesang Kalbo, The Bald Princess, Ang Pitong Hilo, Seven Idiots. Also included here are a number of stories features in the movies and ballet productions mentioned above. Ang Alamat ng Manok, Legend of the Chicken, originally ang Parusa ng Higante of the Giant Curse, ang Sultan Saif, The Sultan Saif, Parusa ng Duwende, The Dwarf's Curse, Rosa Mystica, Mystical Rose, ang Binibining Tumalo sa Hari, The Maiden Who Defeated the King, The Prinsiping Duwag, The Cowardly Prince, Pandakutyong, The Prinsiping Mahaba ang Ilong, The Prince with a Long Nose. The dancers were Nonoy Froilan as the counterpart of Rama, Efi Nanas, Esther Rimpos as Sita, and Robert Medina as Ravana. The production had the dancers moving alongside the characters to provide the choreographic interpretation of their singing and acting. It also featured the song Magbalik Ka Na Mahal sung by Kolidisma, which was said to be instrumental in launching her music career. The Indian epic behind the musical production, the Ramayana, is one of the two great Indian epics that tells about Indian life around 1000 BC, and now Dharma was practiced. Later, it became a model of behavior for the whole Hindu population. Dharma is a type of behavior said to be in accordance with the order that makes life and the universe possible. According to its meaning, it explains the expectations in fulfilling duties, respecting high rights, observing proper conduct, practicing virtues, and maintaining a rightful way of living. The Epic Ramayana consists of 18 books containing approximately 24,000 verses divided into 500 songs. The story revolves around Prince Rama, the eldest son of Dasharatha, king of Ayodhya, who had 3 wives and 4 sons, Rama, Bharata, and twins Lakshmana and Satrugna. Rama considers the incarnations of the Hindu gods Vishnu. He was in the line to the throne after his father decided to retire, but the intercessions from his stepmother prevented his succession. The rebelled on the king's promise to her that he would grant any 2 wishes she desired. She opted to have Rama banished to the forest for 14 years. She wanted to have her own son and Rama's younger stepbrothers, Bharata, to ascend the throne despite the king's pleadings. So this is the example of Indian epics. Without hesitation and in keeping with Dharma, Rama heeded his stepmother's wish and moved to the woods of Panchabati. He was accompanied by his wife Sita and younger brother Lakshmana, both of whom insisted on going with him. When Bharata learned about what happened to Rama, he lamented what his mother had done. He sought Rama in the forest and pleaded with him to return and take his rightful position as king. Rama refused, however, citing his father's command and her stepmother's wish. However, Bharata requested instead to bring Rama sandals. Those would be placed on the king's throne as a symbol of his authority until he returns after 14 years. As the three spent happy years in the forest, they came across Ravana. He was the 10-headed ruler of Lanka, and the one of the forest's evil creatures. He abducts Sita and forces her to marry him. After some mighty battles, Rama is able to kill Ravana and rescue Sita. However, in keeping again with the Dharma and to set a good example, Rama demanded that she prove her purity first before he could take her back as his wife. To which Sita did. They eventually return to Ayodhya and Rama becomes king. Sita and Bharata, they also set good examples following the Dharma. This epic teaches the Indians to perform his Dharma. It is it has become a national symbol of divine virtues upon which their great leaders including Mahatma Gandhi found their inspiration. A revival productions of Ramahari was presented at the Cultural Center of the Philippines from November 30 to December 9, 2012 based on the 1980 version of the same production. This time the pop ballet musical features singers Christian Bautista alternating with O.J. Mariano as Rama, Cariel Tatlong Hari, Kalila Aguilos as Sita, and Robert Sina as Ravana. The character dances were done by Jean-Marc Cordero, Richard San Yadaw for Rama, and Carissa Adia, Catherine Tropio for Sita. Conducting the Manila Symphony Orchestra was Jeffrey Solares. The production made us of jeweled costumes with richly embellished ornaments as headdresses and bangles against a set backdrop that was basically minimalist. The predominantly red-colored base costumes of the principal characters were enhanced by the constructing white flowing attires of the dancers. Related productions entitled Rama at Sita was presented at the University of the Philippines with Ariel Rivera portraying the role of Rama and Lani Misalucha interpreting Sita. Directing the play was Ploy Quintos with choreography as Agnes Locsen. Any clarifications, suggestions about our topic this morning? So if none, thank you so much for listening and don't forget to open your LCMS and don't forget to subscribe our YouTube channel at www.gaitf.com and thank you and mabuhay.